So you want to learn about filmmaking, but you don't want to go to college? I got you covered. Hey, I'm Amy and welcome back. It is back to school season and some of you are probably thinking about college in the next couple of years and some of you may be thinking about film school. I made a video very similar to what I'm going to be talking about today, almost exactly a year ago. If you want to check it out, the link is up in the corner there. But it was mostly about actually going to film school and why I liked going to film school, kind of the pros and cons of both of them. Today, I'm going to be talking about some of the books that I used in film school that I think may be helpful for those who don't want to pay for film school or can't really go to film school, or just if you want to learn a little bit more about filmmaking. I have them broken out into sections. There is a section with books that are on filmmaking in general. There's a section on film history, and then there's also a section on the theory of one particular filmmaker, which in this case is Martin Scorsese, because I took a Martin Scorsese class when I was in film school. I know there are a ton of other books that you can look and check out. There are books on film theory, which I have ordered a couple, and they will be coming in a couple weeks, so I won't be able to, really get a good feel and talk about them on here, but maybe I'll be able to talk about them on my haul video at the end of the month. These are just some of the books that I kept from my film school days that I constantly reference or have gone back to. Some of them I haven't really checked out as much, but I think that they would be very helpful for you if you are interested in any of these subjects. Also, if you watched my 1001 challenge video from Sunday, I announced that I am now an Amazon affiliate. So there will be links in the description for all these books, or at least as many links as I can find for any of these books if you want to purchase them. If you do purchase them through that link, I will get a little bit of a kickback, which will help make my channel even better. So the first ones I'm going to start out with are the Scorsese books, because there are two that I really love, and then there's two that are just kind of okay, or I don't really remember much about them. I'll talk a little bit about when I get to it. So the first one is this Taxi Driver book. It is literally just about the film Taxi Driver. I kept it because, one, it wasn't really worth trying to sell back. I think I got $1, would have gotten $1 for this. That's the resale value of textbooks in college. But I also have a lot of Scorsese books because I took a Scorsese class, and Scorsese is one of my favorite auteur directors, and I draw a lot of inspiration from him when I'm looking at film or just talking about film in general, or even wanting to make a film, because he has masterful works of art, in my opinion. And I, as a film student, he was also a film student, and a lot of the film school brats, as they are called, so Scorsese, Coppola, who else? Spielberg, there's a couple, that's just to name a few, that they're famous, they're like really great now, and they all started out in film school. Or, well, I take that back. Spielberg didn't technically go to film school, he dropped out, but he is still kind of considered part of the film school brat group. But Taxi Driver is literally just about the theory of Taxi Driver. They do a really great in-depth breakdown. I can't remember if I did some of this underlining or if the person who had this book before me did, because I did get a lot of these books secondhand. But if you are a fan of Scorsese or even Taxi Driver, which I am a very big fan of Taxi Driver, it's one of my favorite Scorsese movies, as you can tell, I just thought keeping this would be really great because it does break down some of the really good things that are in Taxi Driver. It talks a lot about it, and it's a very film theory heavy book. So this is not one that I would recommend getting unless you really want to study or get really in depth into the movie. Next is one that I didn't really get a chance to dig deep into when I had it, because we just only talked about it for one episode for one film. It is Hollywood Under Siege. It is basically about religious rights and stuff during Hollywood era. Scorsese had a lot to do with that with his film The Last Temptation of Christ, and all of what he put into that it was very controversial in that time period, and this talks a lot about that, which is kind of funny to me since Scorsese is a lot of his movies have very underscored Christian themes throughout them because he was Christian, and this is it. I don't know much about it, so I can't really speak to it, but if you are interested in something like that, or how Hollywood kind of changed from things like that, and how Hollywood handles stuff like that, or handled stuff like that, this is definitely a good one to check out. But I don't know why I still have this one. I think maybe I kept it because it had a very low resale value, but it may be one that if I want to kind of reference this, it would be a good reference book. The next two are ones that I check back on often because they are both very Scorsese heavy books. The first one is focused around most of my favorite Scorsese films. It is called Gangster Priest, since a lot of Scorsese's work is based around gangster and mob kind of mentalities. So like Casino, Goodfellas, Who's That Knocking on My Door, which is his predecessor for Mean Streets. It also talks about Mean Streets and Raging Bull. It is a really great, it's not to kind of play off of the name Gangster Priest, but it is kind of a Bible for a lot of Scorsese's really great stuff. And I reference this often if I want to kind of look back at some of his past works and get some theory on those. And finally, the last Scorsese book I have is this one, Scorsese on Scorsese. It's basically an interview with Scorsese where he talks about pretty much everything he's ever worked on. Each chapter is a different film, and then there's also chapters on his process, and let's see what else. The music that he uses, because he uses a lot of pop culture music in his films, or music that is popular in the time period that his movie is set in. They also have a chapter on his editing style, his shooting style, like pretty much anything you want to know about Scorsese is in this book, and I love to reference it if I am wanting to kind of pick his brain about different types of things, especially when I am wanting to work on a new project, or just even have the relearning the theory of something that I learned previously. The next two books are just on filmmaking in general, and I will place a little caveat here. You cannot learn filmmaking, the practice of filmmaking, from a book. You definitely need to go do some practical applications of what you learn in these books. These are just books on the theory of filmmaking, and you need to put them into practice. A lot of the books that I have are from my film studies and film theory classes. We never really used books in my actual filmmaking class, so the two that I'm going to show you now are books that I bought after I went to film school. These are books that I constantly reference when I was doing projects outside of school that I wanted to have I wanted to put some of them to use. One of them is just pure filmmaking, and the other one is kind of more of what I am wanting to focus on. So I got one, which is this one. It's called On Filmmaking. It is basically learning how to direct. This is one that I got to kind of put theory to test. It is very much a book you need to put into practice. A lot of what I did in my filmmaking classes was practical work. We, like I said, rarely read out of books. We maybe read a couple pages of a leaflet or an article, but it was mostly just for the slight theory that we would be putting into practice. I do not want to be a director, but I bought this so I could be able to use it to talk to directors, to kind of just have a full understanding of the filmmaking process. Even though I did go to school for filmmaking, I majored in filmmaking and minored in film studies, I do like to know the theory of what I will be going into before I actually put it into practice. The next one is one that I really am trying to focus on in general, and that is you want to be a producer, or so you want to be a producer. I want to be able to know exactly what I am getting into, kind of make sure I understand the ins and outs of producing. The tagline for this is basically finding your story, obtaining the rights, developing the script, hiring your cast and crew, and distributing your movie. So these are basically the steps that you go through as a producer, and this book kind of outlines it for you. Something I do like to do in a lot of my books is highlight, and I like to very much mark up my books so I can go back and reference different points within the book. So that way I know that this is something that I find important and I will probably use in the future. And this is one of the books that really helped me figure out or realize that yes, being a producer is what I want to do. I don't necessarily want to be on the front lines making the film, but I do like to be in the process of creating them and being behind the scenes and making sure everything is going smoothly, according to plan, organized, and making some of the bigger decisions. And this book really gets into that. So if you are thinking about going into producing or filmmaking in general, this is probably a must read, even if you just want to be a director. That way you kind of know these steps going into being a filmmaker. So if you are ever wanting to do any filmmaking, I definitely recommend doing practical applications of what you learn, but these two are good books to kind of get you started. So out of any of these books that I am recommending, these are the two that I probably recommend the highest. This one more so for anybody who wants to go into filmmaking, and this one if you want to be more of the behind the scenes kind of thing, or if you just kind of want to know what a producer does. This one maybe would be a like library rental if you want to kind of just get a little glimpse into it. But if you like to mark up your books like I do, definitely recommend purchasing. And then there are 3 more, and these are all film history books. These are my favorites. These are from film studies classes I have taken and I kept because they just felt like books that I needed to have. The first one I'm going to show you is one that I only got for a very specific class, and it was only for a very specific time that we talked about it, and we only read like one thing, and I think I still kept it because it doesn't have a very good resale value, but it is The Gross. It is about the hits, the flops, the summer that ate Hollywood. So I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, we read this during like our block, or we read segments of this during the time we were talking about like blockbusters, so like Jaws and Star Wars, things like that, kind of when the summer blockbusters started, and it's kind of what made that happen, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been probably about 6 to 7 years since I've read any of these books or even looked at any of these books. I graduated 4 years ago, so it's been a while since I've had a chance to really dig into this one. But if you're a film history nerd and you like any of this stuff, or you're just a history nerd, this is probably a book that you would want to check out. And the next 2 books, the last 2 books, I have a lot of experience with. The first one is one that is probably from my favorite time period in cinema. It's post-war Hollywood, 1946 to 1962. This is the downfall of the studio system, talking about everything that happened after World War II and how Hollywood rebuilt itself, the mistakes it made with the new Hollywood system, and how it kind of became what we know Hollywood to be today. This one I have marked up quite a bit. There was a bookmark in here somewhere. Yeah. So I have like a key of what each highlight color is. And I love marking these books up so I can reference them later, like I said. There's just so much information that I love learning and pulling from these that it's just, to me, it's so interesting. This I wouldn't necessarily recommend unless you are very into film history. The last one is another very, very specific time period in Hollywood. It is is all about the 1970s, when some of the greatest movies were made. It is Easy Riders and Raging Bulls. And it is about a lot of the film school brats, like Martin Scorsese and things like that. And this whole chapter is about Coppola. Yeah. And again, this one is, you can tell, a very loved and well-worn book. I have so many different excerpts highlighted. I go back to this one constantly when I want to reference something from the 70s, especially these. Like, I use this a little bit for my Godfather reviews on my 1001 challenge, or my last 2 ones, because that's when those 2 were made. They were made kind of during that time period. Raging Bulls, one of the great Martin Scorsese movies. There's a lot in here. The last 3 books, they're really only recommended if you enjoy film history, but if you like films from the 1970s. So let's see what else is in here. The Godfather, Chinatown, Taxi Driver, Jaws, Easy Rider, Raging Bulls. It's basically how those movies got made when everyone was just fueled by cocaine. And it's a very interesting read because a lot of crazy stuff happens, and it's it kind of goes along with this one. So it's like this one is a read about how the downfall of the system, and then this is kind of a read of bringing the system back and saving it. So actually all three of these really go together because these two are kind of companion pieces in my mind, in my library. They're not like technically companion pieces, but this is when all of the movies that were kind of summer blockbusters started, were made in the 70s and all of that. So if you really want to kind of get into that, I would read this one, and then this one, and then this one. That's just me. That is my take on all of the Hollywood stuff. But I think those are all of the books I have, and this is a really long video. But again, if you want to purchase any of these books, there will be links in the description. I definitely recommend the 2 filmmaking books because they are really great. I will be talking about the film theory books probably in a couple weeks during my August haul, because those are more of books that I will be referencing even a lot more, because I never really got any books for film theory. It was just kind of, we read articles and stuff in those classes. So I'm really excited to check those out because I'll be able to utilize those even more in a lot of my reviews and my 1001 videos. But thank you guys so much for watching. I really truly do appreciate every single one of you. Let me know who you are in the comments down below, and let's be friends. If you enjoyed this, leave a like and subscribe if you're new, because I love talking all things movies, TV shows, filmmaking, film history, all that fun stuff, and I'll see you next time. Bye!